The morning air was cool and sharp, the kind that made Sarah wrap her hands tighter around her coffee mug just to feel the warmth. Outside the kitchen window, the trees were starting to turn. Orange and gold leaves clinging to the branches before the wind finally shook them loose. Sarah took a slow sip of coffee, watching her 5-year-old son, Jake, through the glass. He stood at the end of their driveway, his small frame nearly swallowed by his oversized backpack. His little sneakers scuffed against the pavement as he rocked back and forth on his heels, waiting for the school bus. She smiled faintly. He looked so grown up now, with the way he insisted on zipping his own jacket, even if it took him 3 tries. Then she heard it. The distant rumble of the bus coming down the street. Jake's whole body went stiff. Sarah's grip on her coffee mug tightened. It happened fast. His shoulders shot up to his ears. His fingers dug into the straps of his backpack like he was holding on for dear life. The bus pulled up with its usual squeaky brakes, the doors swinging open with a loud hiss. And Jake, her sweet, fearless Jake, flinched. Not just a little jump, like when a car backfired. No, this was different. His whole body jerked back like something had hit him. His head ducked down, his arms tightening around himself like he was bracing for what? Sarah's breath caught. But then Jake climbed onto the bus like nothing had happened, disappearing into the rows of foggy windows. The bus pulled away, leaving Sarah standing there, her coffee forgotten, her heart pounding in a way she didn't understand. It's nothing, she told herself. Just excitement. Maybe he's nervous about school today. But the image wouldn't leave her head, the way he had tensed up like he was afraid. Later that afternoon, when Jake came home, she knelt down and pulled him into a hug, pressing a kiss to the top of his head, and that's when she felt it. The way his little body went rigid in her arms. He used to melt into her hugs, his arms wrapping around her neck like he never wanted to let go. Now, he stood stiffly, his hands staying at his sides. Sarah pulled back, searching his face. "You okay, honey?" Jake nodded quickly, not meeting her eyes. "Yeah." But his voice was small. Too small. That night, after tucking him in, Sarah stood in the hallway, listening to the quiet sounds of his breathing. She replayed the moment over and over, the flinch, the stiffness, the way he wouldn't look at her. Sarah decided to pay closer attention. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe Jake had just been cold that morning, or startled by a loud noise. But deep down, she knew better. A mother always knows. So the next day, she watched. She stood by the window, pretending to wipe the counter, but really keeping her eyes locked on Jake as he waited for the bus. The same thing happened. The moment the big yellow bus turned the corner, his little shoulders hunched up, his fingers twisted into the straps of his backpack, turning his knuckles white. When the doors opened, he took a tiny step back before climbing on. Her stomach dropped. The day after that, she noticed something new. Jake's fingernails. They were chewed down to the quick, the skin around them red and raw. He hadn't done that since he was 3. Then, in the middle of the night, she woke up to the sound of quiet crying. She rushed into Jake's room to find him standing next to his bed, his pajama bottoms soaked, his face crumpled in shame. "I'm sorry, Mommy," he whispered, his voice shaking. Sarah's heart broke. He hadn't wet the bed in over a year. She cleaned him up, changed his sheets, and held him until he fell back asleep. But she didn't sleep at all. She just lay there, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The next morning, she tried to be casual about it. She made Jake's favorite breakfast, pancakes with smiley faces made of blueberries, and sat beside him at the table. "Hey, Jakey," she said, keeping her voice light. "Do you like riding the school bus?" Jake froze, his little fork hovering over his plate. He stared down at his pancakes like they were the most interesting thing in the world. "It's loud," he mumbled finally. Sarah waited, but he didn't say anything else. She reached out to smooth his hair, but he flinched, just slightly, before forcing himself to sit still. Her chest tightened. She wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but she could see the way his lower lip trembled. So she just kissed his forehead and said, "Okay, buddy." But she wasn't giving up. Later that day, her phone rang. It was Jake's teacher, Miss Alvarez. "Hi, Sarah," she said, her voice kind but concerned. "I wanted to check in about Jake. He's been really quiet lately." Sarah gripped the phone tighter. "Quiet how?" "Well," Ms. Alvarez said, "he used to love show and tell. He talked non-stop about his toy dinosaurs or the bugs he found outside. But now, when I call on him, he just shakes his head. Sometimes he doesn't even raise his hand anymore." Sarah's throat felt dry. "Has anyone been bothering him?" "Not that I've seen," Ms. Alvarez said, "but I'll keep a closer eye out." When they hung up, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, her hands shaking. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a pattern, and she was going to find out why. Sarah couldn't sleep again. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jake's small body tensing as the bus arrived, his fingernails bitten down, the way his voice got so quiet when she asked about school. She needed to know what was happening. That morning, she made a decision. "Jakey," she said as she helped him put on his shoes, "Mommy's going to work a little late today, okay?" Jake just nodded, his eyes on the floor. He didn't ask why. He hadn't asked many questions lately. Sarah's hands shook as she packed his lunch. She kissed him goodbye at the bus stop like usual, waving as he climbed aboard. But as soon as the bus pulled away, she ran to her car. Her heart pounded as she followed the big yellow bus. She'd never done anything like this before. Was she overreacting? What if it was nothing? Then the bus made its second stop. Sarah pulled over down the street, watching through her windshield. The windows were foggy, but she could see the shapes of kids moving inside. And then she saw Jake. Her sweet boy was pressed against the window, making himself as small as possible. A much bigger boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, was leaning over him, saying something Sarah couldn't hear. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Then it happened. The bigger kid grabbed Jake's arm and yanked it hard, twisting it in a way that made Sarah's stomach lurch. Jake's face crumpled in pain, but he didn't make a sound, didn't call for help, just sat there taking it. The bus driver kept driving, completely unaware. Sarah's hands clenched the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Hot tears burned her eyes, but she blinked them away. She needed to see, needed to know how bad it was. At the next stop, the bigger kid shoved Jake as he walked down the aisle. Jake stumbled but caught himself, hurrying off the bus like he couldn't get away fast enough. Sarah sat frozen in her car, watching her little boy walk into school with his head down. Her whole body trembled, not with fear, but with a fierce, burning anger. That wasn't just kids being kids. That wasn't teasing. That was her son being hurt. She waited until the bus drove away, then pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. She wasn't going to work today. She was going to the principal's office. No one was going to hurt her boy and get away with it. Sarah didn't bother signing in at the front desk. She walked straight past the school secretary, her shoes clicking hard against the tile floor as she headed for Principal Mitchell's office. "Mrs. Wilkins?" The secretary called after her. "Do you have an appointment?" But Sarah was already pushing open the principal's door. Principal Mitchell looked up from her paperwork, startled. Before she could speak, Sarah's voice came out in a rush, shaking but strong. "My son is being hurt on that bus every single day." The words hung in the air. Sarah's hands trembled at her sides, her breath coming fast. She hadn't planned what to say, but now that she'd started, she couldn't stop. "I followed the bus today. I saw an older boy grab Jake's arm, twist it. I saw him shove my son. This isn't the first time. Jake flinches when the bus comes. He's wetting the bed again. He won't talk about school." Her voice cracked. "Something is happening, and I need you to help me." Principal Mitchell's expression changed from surprise to concern. She stood up quickly. "Mrs. Wilkins, please sit down. We'll look into this immediately." 2 hours later, Sarah sat in a small room with Principal Mitchell and Vice Principal Harris, watching grainy bus security footage on a laptop. There it was, clear as day. A boy named Derek, a third grader, pinching Jake's arm when the bus driver wasn't looking. Derek yanking Jake's backpack away, laughing as Jake tried to reach for it. Worst of all, Derek leaning close to Jake's ear, whispering something that made Jake's face go pale with fear. Sarah's stomach twisted. What is he saying to him? Principal Mitchell paused the video. "We'll have to ask Jake. But first, we'll call Derek's parents in to discuss this." Derek's parents arrived angry. "This is ridiculous," Derek's father said, crossing his arms. "Kids tease each other. It's normal." Sarah's hands balled into fists. "This isn't teasing. This is bullying. Your son is hurting mine." Derek's mother scoffed. "How do we know your kid isn't exaggerating? Boys play rough sometimes." Principal Mitchell held up a hand. "We have video evidence, Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Derek has been physically and emotionally harassing Jake. That's not playing rough. That's unacceptable." The room fell silent. Derek, sitting between his parents, stared at the floor. After a long discussion, the school decided Derek would be suspended from the bus for 2 weeks. He'd also have to apologize to Jake and attend counseling sessions. It wasn't enough for Sarah, but it was a start. That night, Sarah sat on Jake's bed, running her fingers through his soft hair. "Jakey," she said gently, "why didn't you tell me about Derek?" Jake's lower lip trembled. He curled into himself, his voice so quiet Sarah had to lean close to hear. He said he'd hurt you if I told." Sarah's heart shattered. She pulled Jake into her arms, holding him so tight she could feel his little heart beating fast against hers. Tears streamed down her face, dripping into his hair. "No one will ever hurt you again," she whispered fiercely. "And no one will hurt me either. I promise." Jake clung to her, his small fingers gripping her shirt like he was afraid she might disappear. The school didn't waste time. By the next morning, bright yellow notices were placed in every student's backpack, explaining the new buddy system. Older kids were separated from the younger ones to ensure everyone felt safe on the bus. Sarah watched as Jake was assigned to sit with Mia, a kind 4th grader who showed him how to make origami frogs during the ride. Derek's 2-week bus suspension turned into a month after more kids came forward with stories. His parents, no longer defensive, sat stone-faced in the principal's office as they discussed transferring him to another school. Sarah almost felt sorry for them, until she remembered Jake's trembling voice saying, "He said he'd hurt you." At home, things changed slowly. The child therapist gave Jake tools, breathing exercises when he felt scared, words to use if someone bothered him. There were still bad nights when Sarah would wake to the sound of crying, still mornings where she'd find chewed fingernails scattered on Jake's bed sheets. But the wetting stopped first. Then the nightmares became less frequent. One crisp Tuesday morning 6 weeks later, Sarah stood at the bus stop holding Jake's hand. The familiar rumble of the yellow bus echoed down the street. She felt Jake's fingers tense in hers just for a second, before he took a deep breath, like his therapist taught him. "You got this, buddy," Sarah whispered, squeezing his hand. Jake squared his small shoulders. When the bus doors hissed open, he didn't flinch. He turned to Sarah with a gap-toothed grin. He'd lost his first tooth just 3 days prior. Gave her a quick hug and bounded up the steps. Through the window, she saw him high-five Mia before plopping into their shared seat. As the bus pulled away, Jake pressed his palm against the glass, waving wildly until Sarah couldn't see him anymore. The tightness in Sarah's chest finally loosened. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And let us know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Thanks for watching.